Clearly the crowds were a supporting actor in that play, and the sports were the main thing. But it's a pretty damn big supporting actor.
100% capacity, not packed at Truist Park, but a great crowd on hand. Watching the game, I didn't think I would notice it as much with the attendance in place. I absolutely did. So much so that I wanted to watch last night, Sunday night as well, after watching on Saturday night because of the buzz with the game itself. I then watched the Canelo fight. 77,000 people at Jerry World down in Dallas to watch this boxing match. And I mean, you had the grand anthems. You had the God Save the Queen. They had they had Mexico's national anthem. They had the national anthem played. Grand stage, pay-per-view on DAZN. That's when I realized, okay, we are about to see the NFL open up in places like this. We are going to see fans back in attendance for Jerry World. I know some other, Washington, for instance, I think has said that they're going to open up. We should see it here. We're very likely to see up to 70 to 80% attendance for the Predators in the playoffs here in Nashville because there will not be capacity restrictions starting next week here in the mid-state. We're going to see fans back. So it's going to be up to the teams.
There's a separate subtopic here with NHL and NBA playoffs and certain teams having a home ice or home court advantage where others won't because of states and restrictions and lack of restrictions other places when you get to these series going back and forth, which I find fascinating. But I'll say this about watching the Braves, for instance, this weekend and hearing the crowd and having an atmosphere. We all would have said a year ago, we'll take the trade-off to have sports and not have fans in the middle of the pandemic, right? And said, well, fans, and then you kind of rationalize it by, fans don't really make that big of a difference. What we want is the sports. It's not the atmosphere. And then I watch this weekend and I hear that noise and I see the atmosphere and I start to think to myself about the biggest sports moments in my life and what I remember about them. I think about 1992, Francisco Cabrera gets the hit, Sid Bream scores Game 7 against the Pirates, and a big part of that was the noise of the tomahawk chop that inning when the Braves had a rally going. The crowd noises when they score. The McDonough saying, safe, Braves win, and David Justice telling them to get down and slide. Those things. And then I start to think about, Paul, when I look back on these moments, clearly the crowds were a supporting actor in that play, and the sports were the main thing. But it's a pretty damn big supporting actor to our sports memories. And now seeing crowds come back, we love the sports when we just had them because we could have them and we would take that trade-off. But now that they're back, I'm yearning for more because I realize what I missed when they weren't there.
I was 10 or 11 for Miracle on Ice, and no better crowd moment than flag waving people, and that was a small arena, right, but also spilled over into the whole town. And I've had the privilege of being in that town. My sister and brother-in-law owned a house there for maybe 10 years later, years after that, but I visited. I totally agree with the idea, like, once the choice was games or no games, we took what we had, and, I didn't need the piped-in crowd noise. I didn't like it. And I was content with the games. But only now that it's coming back do you realize how much you miss that element of it. And it doesn't need to be everything. I mean, this gradual easing in, the 10,000 people that were at Yankee Stadium with the trash cans and the venom for the Astros was a clear indication of it. But now that we're going to get back to something like we saw with the Braves and what we're going to see gradually around the country with full capacity, I think we're not just going to have the sense of it, we're going to have a big sense of it because people are so ready, and anything that gives a hint of a playoff atmosphere or the venom, stored up venom for something like Yankees Astros is going to be over the top because people have been waiting and it's corks popped.
I agree. I am curious to see how long that honeymoon phase lasts with teams that are really bad.
Yeah, it won't last long. It might not start. I mean, if you're going to see who's the worst team in baseball right now, if you're going to see the Detroit Tigers, I don't know that there's any big crowd effect as they strike out 53% of the time. What's the effect at Comerica Park? I don't think there's much.
I don't know if it's much of an effect. In I think NHL and NBA playoffs, there's going to be an effect for certain teams and not others. But just as much as the vibe, the atmosphere of it, and having that back. And yeah, there's no remedy for a terrible baseball team as you get into June, July,
you get
August.
outside. I mean, it's fun to be outside eating popcorn.
It's not going to be an explosion of people going to watch the Tigers.
No.
That you referenced because of that. So that's not going to happen.
Well,
there's no one that gets anyone to Marlins games, regardless, even if they haven't been in a while. So
but if you
that's
have,
going to be a problem.
Sometimes, the discussion was, well, you'd rather stay at home because the best seat in the house is at home.
But now it's let's go do something.
Right. So now, how long does that phase and that feeling last before you're back to, I'd rather
stay at home.
I'd rather stay at home, have my own popcorn and drink and chill out and watch the game.
That's an interesting question.
Well, it's and also the whole debate about private industry and business and government control and at what point is there a breaking point? There's less and less negative feedback to things opening up. Right? I feel like just media coverage-wise, I see a lot less of outrage that the Braves are fully open, that Texas is fully open, that Florida's fully open. So as you get closer and closer to that, the Nashville Predators, for example, you don't think they wouldn't like to have 100% capacity?
Oh, they'd love it.
And sell out every suite and every seat for their playoff series coming up?
But now
it's affecting the bottom lines of these businesses. So at what point is there going to be more fighting back on that? And I went on Clay's show, and I think the date that we originally discussed, this is back in March, was July 4th. And I think Clay threw it out. He said, by July 4th, everything will be 100% open, was his guess at that time. And now I look at it here in early May, and I'm thinking, over half of the adults in this country have been vaccinated. And there's no shortage of vaccination. Everyone can get a vaccination if they want it. So people are either now choosing to get the vaccination or not. So this is where free will as a free citizen goes up against what the government wants you to do and what doctors want you to do. Nick Saban is cutting a PSA urging people in Alabama to go get a vaccine, right? And a lot of college football coaches are going to do this. But
because they're about to open up.
If you were going to, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was you need to stay home for your grandparents or for that immunocompromised person. Even if you don't think you're going to get that sick, you need to make the sacrifice for the greater good. And I think in the beginning, everyone was in on that, right? They were all okay with that. Well, now the people that don't want to get a vaccination, to me, that's their right, but also they're the one taking the risk. Everyone that needs a vaccination or wants a vaccination has a vaccination now, or can go to CVS and get a vaccination, or anywhere they want. So at that point, who am I to say, if you eat fast food for every meal of your day, you're going to have heart disease and diabetes. But that's not me. That's your freedom as an American to make bad decisions at that point. So I just don't, it's a very interesting spot where still state governments are coming in and saying, you can't open up fully. Your business can't fully operate at this level, even though everyone has the ability to get a vaccine now. So where does that end if it doesn't all open up in the next 2 months?
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified every time Outkick 360 goes live. We are live weekdays, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern, right here across the Outkick network. And while you're at it, like this video and let us know what you think in the comments below.